as we've already seen, the 5th century BCE starts off with Athens and Sparta and various Greek city-states fighting on the same side against the Persian invaders. But as we saw in the last video, as soon as the Persians are dealt with, tensions start to rise between Athens and Sparta and their various allies. Sparta gets worried that the Athenian navy is looking maybe a little bit too strong. They were decisively important in the second Persian invasion, and they build this Delian League, whose purpose is to go on the offensive against the Persians, but more and more so, it was starting to look like an Athenian empire. And a lot of this, you can imagine, it's like a game of Risk. The more you take over, the more resources you have, the more that you can build more ships and have more soldiers so that you can take on even more. So as Sparta and Athens are starting to become more and more rivals, Sparta's getting insecure about Athens' influence and their resources and their military power. And we even saw it in the last video. You have an earthquake in Sparta, potentially right around the same time that Sparta was planning an invasion of Athens, leaving the Spartans vulnerable. There's a Helot uprising, these Spartan slaves. The Athenians send hoplites to apparently help the Spartans, but the Spartans are suspicious of it and they send them back. And then it culminates with the skirmish you have between Megara and Corinth, which were historically two Spartan allies, but Athens decides to take sides, gets an alliance with Megara, and that's one thing too many for the Spartans, and so they declare war, and you have what's called the First Peloponnesian War, but that's not the Peloponnesian War. That's the first time that you start having very open conflict between the Spartans and the Athenians. And these conflicts last for on the order of about 15 years, and they're ended with what's called the Peace of 30 Years. But as we will see, this Peace of 30 Years only lasts about 15 years. And the whole time, tensions continue to arise. The Delian League, or you could call it the Athenian power, the Athenian Empire, I should say, is getting more and more powerful. The Athenian navy is getting more and more powerful. And once again, things culminate. And now this is the beginning of the actual Peloponnesian War, the thing that people are referring to when they talk about the Peloponnesian War. In 431 BCE, the king of Sparta is convinced, or is, I guess you could say, he is influenced to, even though he himself was somewhat skeptical of the idea, he decides to invade Attica. Attica is something you will hear a lot about. It is this region right over here, this little outjutting of land that Athens is on. And this first phase of the Peloponnesian War is called the Archidamian War, named for the king of Sparta, who somewhat reluctantly decides to invade Attica. And so that's stage one, Archidamian War. And the Archidamian War, its essential ingredients are, you have Sparta with its dominant army going and having repeated attacks onto Attica, and the Athenians with their dominant navy going and having raids throughout the Peloponnese and along the Aegean coast. So here you have the Athenians going. Let me do the Athenians and the Spartans in two different colors, actually. So here you go. Let's do the Spartans in this red color attacking Attica with their army. And now let's have the Athenians with this light blue color coming here and attacking various points on the Peloponnese and in the Aegean, further extending their influence. Now that first phase ends, and it goes on for quite a bit. It goes on for about 10 years, ends with the Peace of Nicias, or Nicaeus. But as you'll see, and that was actually intended to be a 50-year peace. But as you'll see, it doesn't last long at all. The skirmishes continue. And in 415, the Athenians say, hey, we want to extend our power. Remember, it's like this game of Risk. The more the city-states you take over, the more citizens that you're able to tax, the more soldiers you will have, the more wealth you will have, the more shipbuilding capability you will have. So the Athenians get this great idea to sail all the way to Syracuse. And just to be clear where Syracuse right over here on the coast of Sicily. And this is a long distance in this ancient world. they get this idea to sail all the way to Syracuse to try to take it over and essentially to extend their empire. So this right over here is in 415, this long voyage to take over Syracuse, and it is disastrous. The fleet that tries to go is able to be destroyed, and they get the folks in Syracuse are able to get the assistance of the Spartans, and so that Greek fleet is destroyed. And this is often viewed as the second phase of the Peloponnesian War. So this is the attack at Syracuse. Attack at Syracuse. The failed attempt of the Athenians to get Syracuse. And this is a 2-year period of time, because once again, this is no joke to send your navy and to try to get at Syracuse. And then that takes us into the third phase of the Peloponnesian War. Let me scroll this over a little bit. The third phase is often called the Ionian War. Ionian War. Ionia is this region that's now in modern day, off the coast of modern day Turkey. You have many of the city-states that were part of this Athenian empire. They're starting to revolt. You can imagine that the Spartans are trying to help those revolts because they're trying to get the Athenians wherever they are. This is often also called the Thessalian or Decalian War. Thessalia or Decalia, I'm probably not pronouncing well, is a little village right over here at the top of Attica. And it was a strategic location that went over to the Spartans, and that's where the Decalian War gets its name. But over the course of this third phase, the Spartans get help from the Persians. Remember, this was their enemy. They had the Spartans and Athenians had unified against the Persians, but some time has passed. We're now 70 or 80 years later, and the Spartans say, hey, we want to win this thing decisively. They get the help of the Persians. And finally, in 405 BCE, there's the decisive naval battle at Aegospotami. And I'm sorry to all of you Greeks out there that might be listening. I know my pronunciation is not perfect or close to perfect, but this is a decisive victory right over here for the Spartans. They're able to destroy the Athenian navy, and that's the decisive victory. And then in 404, this is 405, and 404, the Athenians surrender, and the famous Peloponnesian War is over. The Spartans are victorious. But it's not a great victory because, as you can imagine, you have towns that have been destroyed. Large parts of Greece have been weakened, and it leaves the whole area open to attack from others. And as we will see in the next century, in the 4th century, we have Philip of Macedon, or Macedon, depending on how you want to pronounce it, who's able to use that vulnerable. And the Macedonians or the Macedonians, they are related to the Greek people, but he's able to use that vulnerability that happens over the course of the 5th century to attack the city-states of Greece, but he actually is able to unify them.
Okay. Awesome, right? Awesome overview there of what we're going to learn now, okay? So let's get started. Any new people that joined here? Let's take a look. Is Adrian with me? I don't think so. All right. So the Peloponnesian War. Sabrina, would you like to start us off, please? I'm going to randomly select students, okay? So be ready.
Okay. Peloponnesian War.
Thucydides.
After the Persian War, Thucydides, aristocratic Athenian, historian that told the story of the Peloponnesian War. He claims to have begun writing when the war broke out. Very accurate and detailed, removed gods as explanations, unlike Herodotus. No curses, dreams, oracles, omens, etc.
So yeah, remember the two key historians in ancient Greece, Herodotus and Thucydides. Now Thucydides is the main one who takes down the accounts of the Persians and the Peloponnese. Thucydides, History of the Peloponnesian War. Ooh, Pericles, please, Sabrina.
Pericles, famous general in the Peloponnesian Wars. A powerful figure in Athens, 495 to 429 BC.
Strategos.
Strategos, general for 15 consecutive years, major architect of the Athenian Empire Delian League, increased Athenian naval development, and expanded foreign trade throughout Mediterranean.
Good. So he's an important person. Okay. Pericles, right? Famous general in Greek. It's strategos. He was general for 15 years, and he was architect of what we're going to be learn the Delian League. Okay, so I'm just going to, whenever I see an important term or person, I'm just going to jot it down here just so you can go back and you know that it's something that you need to know. Okay. So Pericles, we're going to learn a lot about him. And let's move on. Yep.
Pericles, a leader of Athens during its golden age. He had support from the public and pursued three goals. 1. Strengthen Athenian democracy. 2. Keep the empire strong. And 3. Leave a legacy of a glorious city.
And there he is. There he is talking to the people.
Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC, 27-year war between Athens and Sparta.
And you could just take a look at the allies here of Sparta in purple, and in orange you can see the Athenian League. And here's Delos right over here. The Delian League. Let's get KD. Are you with us? KD?
Sir,
Okay, yeah, yep.
I am here. Hold on. I just need to move out to somewhere a bit more quiet.
Stay with us.
Hold on, sir. Sorry. Okay, so the Delian League, 477 BC. Athenians general Pericles
Mm-hmm.
offered the solution called the Delian League, led an organization designed to fight the Persians, containment of Persia, the gathering of compensation and revenge. Must pay annual fee for common fleet, all meetings held at Delos. Athens agreed to lead the league in military operations against Persia. Each state had one vote in the assembly, regardless of its size. About 150 Polish city-states enrolled in the alliance, similar to NATO, defense against Russian aggression.
Yes, right. Didn't you think of that when you saw this? Led an organization designed to fight the Persians, very similar to NATO, right? Which is defense against Russia and communism, right? So yes, very similar, right? Okay.
So the problem with the Delian League. Sparta refuses to join league. Membership was voluntary, then to forced association. Defeated Persians in 467 BC. League would become an effective military instrument. Then finally it moved to Athens 454 BC, vulnerable to pirates and Persians.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Don't forget the pirates in the water, right? Okay. So yes, eventually moved to Athens, kind of became obsolete. It was just used as an effective military instrument afterwards, especially once the Persians were defeated, right? Around 467, okay, when they were no longer a threat in 467, right? So you were bound to have problems after 467. Okay. And again, Sparta refuses to join. It's important too.
Why did Sparta refuse to join, sir?
Oh, we will learn. There was a lot of distrust from the beginning between Athens and Sparta. Okay, they just never trusted each other. Okay, um, sometimes the best thing to unite people is a common enemy, and they had a common enemy with the Persians. But once the Persians went away, there was no unification there. They did not trust each other.
I see.
For those of you that remember grade 10 history, think of Athens as Britain, right? A great naval power, great overseas shipbuilding. And think of Sparta as Germany, right? A military power on land, right? And just did not trust each other.
So the Delian League, the purpose of the Delian League was to put money into a shared treasury to have on hand in case of war. It took money to make weapons and ships and to train men. The Greeks wanted to be ready to fund a war instantly.
Mm-hmm.
The
Ooh, now the new
Peloponnesian.
league.
Oh,
This is sorry. Let me just. You can read right now. There we go. Go ahead.
okay. The Peloponnesian League, 510 to 500. The Peloponnesian League was created by Sparta. League includes the powerful cities of Corinth and Thebes. The purpose of the league was was mutual protection. Each state pledged to contribute forces in case of war and swore on oath to have the same friends and enemies and to follow the Spartans wherever they led.
Good. So these are two important cities, right? We always talk about this. I mean, you don't really hear this a lot when people think of ancient Greece, but Corinth and Thebes are two very important city states as well. They were both powerful. Okay. More about the Peloponnesian League, KD.
Okay, the Peloponnesian League. Sparta soon created a confederacy of most of the other Peloponnesian states. Sparta was in charge, and the other states would supply troops. Each had its own treaty and sent deputies to help in decision making. This is known as the Peloponnesian League.
And you could see the allies here in this picture. Okay. Tommy, do you want to read a little bit?
Sir, isn't this basically just a counter alliance then?
Sorry, is it a counter alliance? Yes. If you take a look at the date, the Peloponnesian League was actually was put forward first. But yes, it's very similar to that of what we had NATO versus Warsaw, right? NATO versus Warsaw. Warsaw was kind of a counter alliance. So yeah, very, very similar, right? You can say that. And here's what the relation I made earlier. Sparta, land power, conservative, small trading nation. Let me put that here. And where you had Athens, a sea power, radical democracy, encourage culture and wealth and trading. Let me put that here. Okay. So you can see here, this is a major, major difference in conservative and liberal, an oligarchy versus a democracy. Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
Like when you say conservative, like it's not like is it accurate to say that? Because like weren't those concepts like invented in the French Revolution? Like, isn't it kind of difficult to map like a modern understanding?
Yeah, when I say conservative, I don't mean conservative in how we view it today, right? And when I say liberal, I don't mean liberal in how we view liberalism today, but I mean back then, right? I mean back then, obviously it's different types of government than it is today. Like you said, it's, you know, with the French Revolution, modern history, it's different, yes. But, you know, I mean, we tend to view Spartans as more of a conservative, more of, you know, society based on, you know, the army and trying to build warriors as men. as young men. And Athens is more, it's all about a democracy. It's all about sharing and culture and trading. And, so of course, it's definitely, we wouldn't compare it to conservatism today. But yeah, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks, sir.
So just know that these are very, very different types of city-states. Okay. Tommy, did you want to read or no? No. Dina? Is Dina with us? Dina, are you with us? Stephanie, are you with us? You want to read, Stephanie?
Sir, I'm at school already.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Nathan, are you ready to go, Nathan? You ready to read?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so in 464, Helot revolt in Sparta. The Athenian military ruler Timon convinced Athens to send soldiers to help Sparta, but Sparta refuses due to suspicions, and led to Timon's ostracism in Athens.
Two.
Athens. Oh, say again.
No, number 2.
Yep. Okay. So Athens asked for help by a Spartan ally, Megara, to help against Corinth. Sparta takes this as a threat, Sparta takes this as a threat to increase power and trade, and that leads to war. So, the Athenian general Pericles attempts to increase the Athenian land in Greece, and leads to distrust, anger, and fear.
Good. So this is a big one here. Okay. So one, you have helots, which are slaves, right? A helot is another term for a slave. Okay. Okay. Here, Athens is asked for help by Spartan ally Megara. Okay, to help against the Corinthians, and that really upsets the Spartans. Okay, they take this as a sign of threat, right? So Megara, this was a big one, and then of course the Athenian general Pericles attempts to increase Athenian land. So there's just more and more distrust and anger, but between the two. Okay. Here's another look at the allies, alliances that are being drawn. And now we get into the war. 431. Nathan, nice and loud.
Okay, so the Peloponnesian War at 431 BC lasts 27 years. Pericles built a fortress, long walls, around Athens for protection. But there's a plague in 430 BC, 1/3 of the population dead in 2 years, which is pretty big. Yeah, caused by overcrowding and unsanitary conditions. Okay, and then Spartan weakness was their navy. They didn't have much of a navy. Unskilled sailors and poor ships, but their strengths were mostly infantry and ground units. Sparta attacks at Attica, but can't stay long and lacked slaves and workers to harvest for them. Now the two sides are more closely balanced in power and resources, and leads to a peace treaty. Truce of 421 BC.
Good. So the war breaks out in 431. Pericles built this fortress of long walls, something that looks like this. So you have Athens walls and this fortress that leads you right to the water, where you can still maintain your ships and your empire throughout the Aegean. So what happens is the Spartans get there, they surround Athens, but there's nothing they can do. All they can do is sit there and wait, destroy the agriculture, and that's all they can do. It's a great setup. by Pericles. But what he doesn't realize is that what's going to happen is there's going to be a plague that strikes Athens in 430, and it's going to kill a third of the population. Okay. So it was a great idea. It was a great strategy, but he did not see this happening, this plague. Okay. Unsanitary conditions could have been because of overcrowding. Okay. So we're at a bit of a stalemate at this point. And there's a piece at about 421. This is what it looked like. So imagine the Spartans are just surrounding this area. And that leads us to our second campaign in Sicily. David.
Sorry. Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah. Alcibiades. Yeah, it was a big mistake by Alcibiades and the Athenians in 415 to attack Syracuse. Okay, it was a big mistake. Okay, because pretty much all of their fleet was destroyed. Okay, and it really turned the tide for the Spartans. There's a picture. Not a great picture, but you can see kind of the alliances. Here's Sicily, here's Syracuse, and how they got there. See how they kind of came up and then back down. And last but not least, a Spartan victory in 404 BC. Sarah, can you finish it off for us? A Spartan victory at Aegispotami.
Yeah, for sure. So the Spartan victory in 404 BC. In 408 BC, Persia supports the Spartans, provides ships. 405 BC, the final battle at Aegispotami, near Dandales Strait. General Lysander, Spartans destroy the Athenian fleet. The Athenian fleet of 180 ships are lost. The Triseme. By 404 BC, Athenian Empire comes to an end. Results for Athens. Athens tears down walls, surrenders, governed by Sparta. Thebes and Corinth pushed for a complete destruction of Athens. Ionian communities under Persian rule, Asia Minor. Athens never again a leading city-state.
Wow. So that's it. Towards the end of the 5th century, you have the Spartans making a deal with their enemy, the Persians, all to defeat the Athens. So the Persians are supplying ships. They have their final battle here at Aegispotami, very close to where Troy was fought, near the Dardanelles. Okay, Spartan destroyed the Athenian fleet, absolutely destroyed. The 180 ships, these are called triremes. These are the ships that the Greeks made, called triremes. All lost. Athenian Empire comes to an end, and Sparta is victorious. And the surrounding city-states all want Athens burned to the ground. They want Athens destroyed. Wow. Wow. That's interesting, right? Consequences for Greeks. Sarah, what are the consequences for the Greeks?
Athens' democracy survived, economy in decline. Thebes becomes a major power in Greece. Spartan power is temporary and in decline. Persia, territory increases and will gain more power in Greece.
Good. So although the Spartans won the war, they were not the most powerful army. They were not the most powerful force going forward. They were significantly weakened. Okay? They were significantly weakened. It opened the door for a new power to come in because the two major powers, Athens and Greece, were both so hurt and devastated by this. And even though the Spartans may have come up victorious, they were in no position to be to continue as the dominant power. They were so weakened. Okay? So that brings us to our final slide and the beginning of Philip of Macedon and his son Alexander. Finish us off. Sarah, please. You can finish.
Thebes versus Sparta. End of Greek city-states. Sparta's hatred of democracy made them extremely unpopular. After the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, Thebes ended Spartan domination. Theban domination was short-lived. Lost battle at Mantina 362 BC. The age of the powerful city-states had ended. Greece became easy prey for a stronger power. Macedonia, located in North Greece, the young and strong country. Philip of Macedon, 360 BC, took advantage and ushered in the Hellenistic Age. Hellenistic Age, the spread of Greek culture throughout the Mediterranean world.
Awesome. Awesome. So this is very important. So Thebes becomes the dominant power for a very short time. And to the north, you have Macedonia. Macedonia is its own, territory, very similar to the Greeks. Same language, very similar culture. But it's their time. It's the time of Philip. It's the time of Alexander. Okay. And that is the story of Athens and Sparta. That is the story. It's a sad story. It's a story that you guys need to know. And I don't think it's good enough hearing it from Mr. D'Annunzio. I think it's important that you hear it from the man himself, and that is Thucydides. Do you want to hear it from Thucydides? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much everything I know about the Peloponnesian War, I learned from Thucydides. Thucydides was a wealthy fellow from the suburbs of Athens. He served as a general in the Peloponnesian War and actually managed to survive the whole bloody affair. Thucydides' history of the Peloponnesian War is no memoir, though. In its day, it was the most thorough historical account ever written. And, in my humble opinion, we haven't made many improvements since then. Thucydides has all the qualities that have come to define a great historian. He's unbiased, or at least trying to be. He's incredibly thorough. He's not interested in the supernatural, only the rational. And best of all, he was there. So, much as I would like to tell you all about the Peloponnesian War, the honor belongs to my good friend Thucydides. The Peloponnesian War was a chaotic, messy conflict between Athens and Sparta that dragged on for nearly 30 years. At the beginning of the war, Athens controlled a vast maritime empire. By the end of the war, Athens had been stripped of its empire and did not even control itself. So, what happened to bring the mighty Athenian empire low? Well, the causes of the Peloponnesian War stretch back for decades. After the Persian navy was destroyed at the Battle of Mycale, the Athenians founded the Delian League to punish the Persians by taking their colonies in the Aegean and adding them to the Athenian Empire. With no navy to defend them, the Persians were soundly defeated. And within 30 years, the Athenians controlled a vast maritime empire, containing most of the islands in the Aegean and much of the coast of Asia Minor. Meanwhile, back at home, as Athens grew ever richer and more powerful, the Spartans were feeling increasingly nervous about Athens' imperial ambitions. As I wrote in my history, the growth of the power of Athens and the alarm which this inspired in the Lacedaemonians, Spartans, made war inevitable. Now, Sparta had its own league, the Peloponnesian League, which included most of the city-states of mainland Greece. And they did not appreciate the Athenians trying to poach their member states for their Delian League. In 465 BCE, Sparta's slave class, the Helots, attempted to throw off their Spartan oppressors. Every Greek city-state sent soldiers to help put down the revolt. The Athenians sent a large contingent of over 5,000 soldiers, but the Spartans would not allow them into the country, fearing that so large a force intended to take advantage of the chaos, not to help with it. This was but the first of many insults each side offered each other. The next major insult came in 449, when two members of the Peloponnesian League, Megara and Corinth, started fighting. Eager to gain a stronghold on the mainland, Athens formed an alliance with Megara and entered the fighting. The result was a 15-year-long struggle between Athenians and Spartans, which some have called the First Peloponnesian War. This battle only concluded in 445 BCE with the signing of the 30 Years' Peace. The 30 Years' Peace was basically an agreement between the Spartans and the Athenians not to mess with one another's respective empires. But the terms of this peace proved too much for the Athenians to live by. For the next 15 years, Athens started acting more and more like a bully. They crushed revolting colonies. They sowed dissent among Sparta's allies. They vied with their neighbor, Corinth, for control of the islands of the Aegean, and even imposed economic sanctions on their former allies, the Megarians. Until, in 431, the rest of the world could take it no longer. Athens had made enemies of the Spartans, the Peloponnesian League, the king of Macedon, the emperor of Persia, and even their own allies. Everyone was so mad at Athens that a conflict was inevitable. But the Athenians were prepared for this fight. Their leader, Pericles, had been certain that the 30 Years' Peace would not live up to its name. So as soon as the Spartans had left the land surrounding Athens, they had started building a long wall connecting the city of Athens to its port, the Piraeus. In this way, Pericles said, Athens could behave like an island. It did not matter that the Spartan army was invincible. Athens never had to meet Sparta on land. It did not matter if Sparta burned their fields and stole their flocks. Athens had an entire empire to import food from. As long as the Athenian navy reigned supreme, it could keep the city supplied, even against the longest siege. Moreover, that navy allowed the Athenians another advantage over their land-based foes, the Spartans. An army is only useful in a battle. It spends most of its time moving from point A to point B. This might take months. As a result, that amazing Spartan army was really only useful for a few days out of the month. By contrast, with their ships, the relatively small Athenian army could show up anywhere at any time. They could disembark, do their damage, and beat back to sea before their enemies could muster any resistance. The speed and mobility of the Athenian navy was especially dangerous to Sparta, since their slaves, the Helots, were always on the brink of revolt. The Spartans had to keep much of their army at home, at all times, lest the Athenians sail around them and stir up a revolt in their homeland. So, despite being surrounded by enemies, it seemed the Athenians were in an excellent position. They could hold their empire, Pericles warned, so long as they did not try to expand upon it. Yet there were things that Pericles did not account for. The first and foremost of these was that when you shove thousands of people within city walls for months, with no room and only primitive forms of sanitation, people tend to die. The walls protected the Athenians from the Spartans, but the tight quarters made them prone to disease. Within the first year of the war, a plague swept through the city of Athens, killing over 30,000 Athenians. It was a dreadful affair, not the least because the plague took Pericles, the visionary who turned Athens into an empire. Without their leader, the democratic Athenians found it impossible to prosecute the war effectively. They had no single mind, no single vision to unite them. Instead, Athenian strategy vacillated from aggressive to defensive, as different demagogues rose to power and fell from grace. Hold on, Thucydides. I'm not sure our viewers know what a demagogue is. Oh, really? Kids these days. A demagogue is a leader who follows the people instead of leading them. He tells them what they want to hear and simply tries to keep them happy so they'll get reelected. Really, we call those politicians. What a horrible world you must live in. Well, anyway, Pericles wasn't like that. He taught the people. He reasoned with them. He encouraged them to reach their full potential. The demagogues just rode the wind of whatever the mob drove them to. The worst of these demagogues was Alcibiades. Alcibiades was everything the Athenians were looking for. He was rich, he was sexy, he was even relatively clever, having studied under Socrates. Alcibiades could work up a crowd like a pro. Yet none of these characteristics made him trustworthy. Alcibiades encouraged the Athenians to abandon Pericles' excellent plan to not expand the empire. Instead, Alcibiades suggested an ambitious campaign to Sicily, which was struggling to fight off an invasion from Syracuse. Alcibiades led the expedition himself, yet when the Athenians recalled him, he defected to the Spartans and betrayed all of Athens' plans. This would not be his last defection. Alcibiades switched teams several times in the course of the war, from the Spartans to the Athenians and then back again. He even worked for Persia for a while. The Persians were all too eager to help Greeks kill other Greeks, and the worldly Alcibiades acted as an intermediary. Eventually, his dupes lost their fondness for him and killed Alcibiades for his treachery. Yet Alcibiades was but one of a long list of ambitious men who sought to lead Athens. Any one of these leaders' plans might have worked, but the constantly shifting Athenian war policy doomed every effort. Without a firm hand to guide them, the Athenian populace made blunder after blunder. They switched commanders on a dime, yet held to disastrous strategies year after year. When the first expedition to Sicily failed, they sent another, and then another, until nearly the entire Athenian fleet had been destroyed, and most of the Athenian navy had been sold into slavery. Despite these catastrophes, the Athenians struggled on for another decade. They raised new armies and built new ships. Yet their continued naval supremacy was mostly due to the genius of their commanders. Unfortunately, in a fit of rashness, in 406 BCE, the Athenians executed their greatest naval commanders after the Battle of Arginusae. Though the battle was a great victory, the generals had retreated to save their fleet from a storm, instead of remaining behind to collect stranded soldiers and finish off the Spartan fleet. And for this, they were sentenced to death. With no decent leaders left, the Athenians blundered hopelessly. In 405 BCE, their last fleet was destroyed by a Spartan force sailing in Persian ships, and the following year, Athens surrendered. The Spartans tore down the walls of Athens, disbanded its democracy, and set up an oligarchy, the 30 Tyrants. This group killed off many of the most prominent men of Athens. Yet Sparta's victory was short-lived. Within a year, the Athenians had expelled the tyrants and re-established their democracy. Yet the damage had been done. The two greatest powers of Greece had weakened one another to such an extent that neither would ever fully recover. Over the following decades, Athens and Sparta had to bend knee, first to their fellow Greeks, the Thebans, and then to the invading Macedonians. Thanks, Thucydides. That was awesome and quite thorough. Well, to summarize, the Peloponnesian War was fought between Athens and Sparta. Both of these city-states were the heads of large leagues of allied cities. Athens' Delian League controlled the sea with a powerful navy. Sparta's Peloponnesian League controlled the mainland of Greece with a powerful army. Athens' steady rise in power and wealth caused anger among the Spartans and even among its own allies. When war finally broke out, the Athenian leader, Pericles, suggested that Athens behave like an island. They should not try to meet the Spartans in open battle, but should stay inside the city. An unforeseen result of these close quarters was a plague that killed off much of the Athenian population, including Pericles. After losing Pericles to the plague, the Athenians made a series of grave strategic errors, including a drawn-out expedition to Sicily and the condemnation of some of their greatest leaders to death. These mistakes, and Athens' general inability to stick to a course of action without a central leader to guide them, ended up costing the Athenians their empire.
All right. Oh. Hi, Richard. Welcome back. Welcome. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I think that video is great. Really takes you into the Peloponnesian War and goes over a lot of the key terms that you learned today. Okay. Are there any questions for me? Any questions for me, guys?
No, it was a really cool video, though. It was funny that he was like the statue was speaking.
Hold on, guys. Take a 5-minute break, okay? Take a 5-minute break. I'll be back in 5 minutes, okay? So someone's at the door. I'll be right back.